The 2010 Atlanta Press Club Debates, brought to you live from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Now the Republican race for Insurance Commissioner.
Good evening. I'm Ricky Bevington, host and executive producer here at Georgia Public Broadcasting. Welcome to our 2010 primary election campaign debates, originating from the studios of GPB. Tonight's debate is organized by the Atlanta Press Club. Let's meet the Republican candidates facing each other in Georgia's primary election for Insurance Commissioner. They are in alphabetical order. Dennis Cain is an insurance agent. Rick Collum is an attorney. Seth Harp is an attorney. Ralph Hudgens is an investor. Tom Knox is an attorney. John Mamalakis is an insurance agent and administrator. Northington is an insurance agent, and Gerry Purcell is a businessman, and Maria Sheffeid is an attorney. Here is the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, each candidate will answer one question from one of three panelists. The second round, the candidates will ask a question of one of their opponents. Each candidate will have time for a rebuttal in this round. And in the third round, the panelists will continue questioning the candidates. And finally, each candidate will have 60 seconds to make a closing statement. Before we get started, let's meet our panelists, selected by the Atlanta Press Club. First, we have Blake Odd. He is a reporter for the Athens Banner-Herald. Next is Walter Jones, who is with Morris News. And finally, we have Gene Ross, news director for WAOK and V103 Radio. All right, let's get started with the debate. In the first round, each candidate is going to be asked a question by one of our panelists, and the candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. No rebuttals will be allowed in this round. By random selection, Northington gets the first question from Blake Odd.
Mr. Northington, most Republicans support allowing insurance companies to sell policies across state lines, but you don't. Why don't you?
Well, Blake, I appreciate the opportunity to answer that question. You know, I'm concerned about the federal government taking over more constitutional powers away from the states. And I believe that if we allow the purchase of insurance over state lines, what we're going to end up happening is that the states are going to lose the rights that were granted to us under the McCarran-Ferguson Act of 1945. And so I'm very concerned about that, and I believe that we have an opportunity on the state level to make changes with mandate-free plans and high-risk pools and a number of other things that we can do on our own instead of allowing the federal government to continue to take more powers away from us here on the state. So that's what my hope as Insurance Commissioner of Georgia is to do, is to look at alternatives here. And I've been doing that with a number of insurance companies and other organizations to see what kind of true free market systems that we have here in place that we can accommodate more insurance and competition coming into Georgia instead of going out of Georgia.
All right, Walter Jones, it is your turn to ask Gerry Purcell a question.
Yes, Mr. Purcell, one of the big issues during the legislative session this past year had to do with what's called stacking of car insurance. And I'd kind of like to hear your view on that.
Well, I'm not familiar with a particular bill that you are referencing. What's the number on it, Walter? Do you have the number?
I don't know the bill number, but what the legislation allowed was for you to add your liability coverage on top of the coverage of the uninsured motorist, basically.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the stacking provision. I'm also in favor of the file and use on automobile policies that was put into effect a few years ago. I think the big issue for automobile insurers is a speed-to-market issue, and being able to make rate adjustments as long as they fit within the 10% cap, I think is a good idea. So I am in favor of that. The only thing I wish we would do is extend it to commercial automobiles as well.
Okay. Blake Odd. Oh, Gene Ross, it's your turn to ask a question of John Mamalakis. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Ricky. Mr. Mamalakis. Mamalakis.
Oh,
okay.
Apologies.
Homeowners constantly complain about paying their homeowners insurance for years, never having to make a claim, and then when something happens, they make a claim and then they are dropped by their insurance companies. Do you think that's a fair practice? And if you are elected, will you continue that practice, or will you try to reform that?
Well, I think the department needs to be responsive to the general public in terms of overall conditions. If there is a specific citing of an inequity as far as how an insurance company is conducting itself, and is canceling people as a result strictly of having losses, then I think the department should scrutinize that insurance company and bring some pressure to bear to protect the citizenry of Georgia.
And it's now Blake Odd's turn to ask Ralph Hudgens a question.
Thank you. Senator Hudgens, the State Ethics Commission recently postponed a hearing on whether you illegally transferred $106,000 from your state Senate campaign account to your insurance commissioner account. Have you put that money back?
I have. I've transferred it back. Blake, I sought counsel from the State Ethics Commission before this was back in December of last year, and I followed their instructions specifically, did it exactly the way they told me. Then I found out that it was not done right, and so they advised me to move the money back, which I did, and we are in the process now. If we'd had that meeting yesterday, it would have been resolved. A compliance agreement has been signed, and there's been no finding of any wrongdoing on my part.
All right, I want to remind our guests, our candidates, that you do have 60 seconds to respond. Feel free to take it. We don't mind brevity, but you do have 60 seconds. So the next question is from Walter Jones to ask Maria Sheffield a question.
Ms. Sheffield, one of the biggest challenges in the insurance industry for the providers is getting paid in a prompt manner. What would you do to provide or to see that providers are getting paid what they're owed in a prompt manner?
Yes. Well, as you know, Georgia has a prompt pay law on our books that requires that insurance companies pay physicians in a timely manner. Unfortunately, I have heard that that is not necessarily being followed in this state. And as I've traveled and met with providers around the state, I have talked with them about this issue, and not just as far as the payment of claims are actually concerned, but also making sure that the processing as far as getting approval for actual procedures. I know that that's certainly a problem as well. And what we need to do as insurance commissioner, one of the things that you have the ability to do are market conduct exams. And in market conduct exams, you have an opportunity to take a look at if insurance companies are timely paying their claims. So I think as insurance commissioner, you just bring the full scale of the department down on insurance companies when you see that there's a problem there.
All right, thank you. Jean Ross, it is your turn to ask Seth Harp a question.
All right, Mr. Harp, you're a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you serve on any committees related to insurance or health care in the Senate?
Yes, ma'am. I was an ex officio member a number of years ago of the Insurance Committee, but as my role in the Senate has been, I currently serve as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I serve as the chairman of Higher Education Committee, and probably the most significant committee is I serve on the Joint Appropriations Committee, which has oversight of the budget. That has oversight of the entire budgeting process and certainly has an impact upon the Commissioner's office as well as all of the other branches of the government. With that understanding, you then have an idea and appreciation for what you can and cannot do through the Insurance Commissioner's office. So I've been there, I've done that. It's been my role to be a spokesman for keeping taxes as low as possible and making sure that we keep government out of people's pockets as much as possible. We've tried to keep a conservative budget, and we've done that. Thank you.
All right, another question from Blake Odd. You may ask your question of Dennis Cain.
Excuse me. Mr. Cain, you've criticized auto insurers for basing rates on credit scores rather than on driving records. What would you do to stop that practice?
Well, I would love to completely stop it. I don't know at this point with as many companies in Georgia doing it. It's kind of hard to stop a train. But I would work to do the best I could to try to reverse it back, because I believe this practice is legal discrimination. A lot of senior citizens are being adversely affected because they own their own home, they don't have any credit cards, so they don't have any credit, so they get an N score from the insurance companies. There's a lot of injustices going on with credit-based insurance scores, and I will do everything in my power as Commissioner of Insurance to undo what's been done. But, like I say, it's hard to stop a train. Thank you.
All right, we will finally hear from Rick Collum. Walter Jones, you have a question?
Mr. Collum, I would like to hear your views about what's called the mandate light insurance, the policies that don't have the same requirements that are currently under the Georgia law?
Well, first of all, I'm not in favor of any mandates from any governmental entity. I believe that the free market is where everything lies, and we need to work and try to emphasize a free market economy in this state. The legislature has the power to legislate what mandates we may have or may not have. My focus in my campaign has been on insurance fraud. My experience in my past as a Deputy United States Marshal and as a magistrate judge and as a Special Assistant Attorney General for the state of Georgia has provided me an opportunity to investigate insurance fraud. I've taught law at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, the Secret Service, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and a number of other federal agencies. Through collateral agreements and memorandums of understanding, we can bring these agencies together to tackle and combat insurance fraud, and that will lower insurance rates and premiums for individuals in the state. The state of Georgia enacted a law some years ago, and the quote from that law was that vigorous prosecution...
5 seconds, Mr. Collum.
Thank you. Vigorous prosecution of insurance fraud saves taxpayers money.
All right, thank you. And our final question for this round comes from Jean Ross, asking Tom Knox a question.
All right, Mr. Knox, there's a major problem with slumlords, dilapidated buildings, empty houses in some areas that drive property values down. If you were elected insurance commissioner, how would you tackle this problem and do a better job of enforcement?
Well, first, I'm not sure that's exactly the insurance commissioner's issue. It might be under the fire safety an issue, but I really think that's up to the cities and the counties to enforce zoning ordinances that they have in place. I understand that they're reluctant to do that because when you knock down a house that's vacant, you have legal ramifications from that, and then you have a blighted lot and a blighted area instead of a residence that someone might be able to occupy at some time. And of course, it does create some insurance problems from the standpoint that vacant residences don't usually have insurance policies covering them in the event that there is loss from vandalism and fire because there's nobody living in the premises. So I think that's something that you'd have to work with the local jurisdictions on, and we have a way of doing that through the fire marshal's office to work with the local communities on exactly those issues. I thank you for the question.
Thank you, and that is it for round one. It is now time for our candidates to ask each other a question. You have 15 seconds for the question, 30 seconds for rebuttal, and then 15 seconds to respond. And we're going to start with Gerry Purcell.
Yes, Ricky. My question is to Senator Harp. Senator Harp, on June the 19th at a Union County breakfast, you said that if elected as insurance commissioner, I will take a bottle of Lysol, maybe a gallon, and go through and clean up the office of insurance commissioner. Can you tell us exactly what you meant by that?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to. While I don't like to violate the 11th commandment of the Republican Party of speaking badly, there has been improprieties in the insurance commissioner's office, and my goal is to stop those improprieties and make that the insurance commissioner's office is a level playing field for all people concerned, including the citizens, particularly the citizens, and I want those citizens to feel like they have the opportunity to go before that office fairly and not have to pay a kickback.
Rebuttal?
Yes, I think ethics is an important issue, and leaders set the tone for ethics. My ethics policy will be for the department that I will accept no gifts, no meals, no entertainment, no trips unless I pay my own way, and I think that will go a long ways towards restoring trust in that department.
All right, Rick Collum, you may ask one of your opponents a question.
Thank you. My question is for Steve Northington. Mr. Northington, how would you prosecute insurance fraud?
Well, what I would do, Rick, is I would actually look at the different cases. I believe my experience as an insurance agent to understand some of the things that I've seen some insurance agents do improperly gives me a unique perspective. I actually had a case with a friend of mine who did something that I believed was to be illegal and went ahead and turned him into the insurance commissioner's office and didn't see as much action as I would have liked to have seen. And, you know, I would do everything I could possible to make sure that doesn't happen to any other insurance agent.
Mr. Collum, you have 15 seconds.
The power of the insurance commissioner's office is to utilize the state and local courts to compel individuals who are being investigated for insurance fraud to testify in court. That's how I would do it.
All right, Ralph Hudgens, 15 seconds for a question.
I'd like to ask this question to Mr. Mamalakis. As chairman of the Senate Insurance Committee in 2002, the department asked me to introduce a piece of legislation called the Viatical Settlements, and we updated that in 2009 as the Life Settlement Acts, and this protects the senior citizens of Georgia. What would you do to protect senior citizens?
Well, not just senior citizens, Senator Hudgens. I think it's incumbent for the insurance commissioner to work closely with the legislature, something that has not been done very much under the current administration, so that we provide better protection for not just seniors, but military people and people of all classes.
15-second rebuttal.
I agree with that, and I think that the job of the insurance department is to protect all the consumers in the state of Georgia.
All right, it is now Dennis Cain's turn to ask one of his opponents a question.
I'd love to ask this question of everyone on this panel besides myself, but I'm going to ask it to Senator Hudgens. Why haven't you taken up the cause of credit-based insurance scores in Georgia as legal discrimination?
Because as a member of the National Conference of Insurance Legislators, the life insurance chair of that organization, we've done an in-depth study of credit scoring, and we found out that is the most accurate predictor of a person's driving record and their claims experience. And so we have incorporated that in Georgia. To change it, it would take legislative action, but I'm in favor of credit scoring.
Okay, well, I'm not, and I think you should go check the Internet out and study it for yourself in the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stephen Northington with a question.
Yes, my question is for Senator Hudgens. You are chair of the Senate Insurance Committee, a position that has tremendous influence on insurance legislation, yet Georgia remains one of only 5 states that has never managed to establish a mechanism for high-risk and uninsured citizens. Why do you think you can improve insurance in Georgia from the Commissioner's office when you couldn't do it in the legislature?
Well, Representative Knox and I were both on a commission that studied this high-risk pool to establish in the state of Georgia, and we came up with a wonderful high-risk pool. The problem was we couldn't figure out a way to pay for it without a tax increase, and I am vehemently opposed to taxes. We did model legislation, but it was fought very heavily by the Chamber of Commerce, and it did not move.
Mr. Northington?
Yeah, as insurance commissioner, I would do everything possible to actually set up a high-risk pool here in Georgia. As one of only 5 states in the country that's never been able to do this, we have the second highest premium taxes of any state in the country. We need to use a portion of the premium taxes that are already being paid in order to set up a high-risk pool.
Thank you. It is now Tom Knox's turn to ask a question of one of his opponents.
This would be for Maria Sheffield. Would you tell us what the #1 drag on the insurance markets in Georgia might be?
I think what we need in Georgia is more competition. We need to create a regulatory environment here that is free from government interference.
Mr. Knox, would you like 15 seconds for a rebuttal?
No, I'd agree with that.
Okay. Mr. Mamalakis, you can have a question for someone.
Yes. My question is for Ms. Sheffield. There's been a great deal of talk and discussion about the office of the insurance commissioner being appointed rather than an elected position, and I would like to know your position on that.
As an attorney, I've had an opportunity to literally work with every insurance department in the country. There are 12 or either 13 insurance commissioners that are actually elected. What I have found as I've worked with these different insurance commissioners is that by having an elected commissioner, you have someone who is well versed in the areas. You're not looking at a political appointment. I think absolutely, also as a conservative Republican, that we keep this particular office in the hands of the voters.
Mr. Mamalakis, would you like to respond? 15 seconds.
In my 37 years as a professional agent, we've never had a person with insurance background to lead the department. I hope that I have the opportunity of being a person that gets elected by the people of Georgia with insurance experience for the people.
All right. Ms. Sheffield, it's your turn to ask a question.
Right. I'd like to ask this question of Mr. Hudgens. You recently said that as insurance commissioner you can't do squat about health care. Now, to me, the difference between a leader and a bureaucrat is that you seek to find solutions to problems. And so I would like to know, if you're not willing to go head-to-head with Obama on this particular matter, what is your interest in this particular race?
Well, Ms. Sheffield, I have gone head-to-head with Obama. In fact, I introduced Senate Bill 411, which protects the citizens of Georgia. In brief, it says that no law, rule, or regulation can force any Georgia citizen to buy health insurance against their will. And as far as I'll stand by that statement, it's been taken out of context by you and one other. And I was referring to a constitutional challenge. That's up to the Attorney General. It's not up to the Insurance Commissioner to launch that constitutional challenge.
Ms. Sheffield, a 15-second response.
As insurance commissioner, you're responsible for reviewing rate and form filings. There are at least 8 different types of health insurance products that file their forms and their rates with the department. We also have issues now because of the federal bill related to risk pools as well as exchanges. So I believe that there is a lot as insurance commissioner you can do to affect health care.
And our final question for this round comes from Seth Harp.
And my question is for Ms. Sheffield also. Ms. Sheffield, having served in the state senate for the past 10 years, I've had to answer to my constituents. You were on the other side of the rope line as a lobbyist, and you answered to the insurance industry. If you're elected the insurance commissioner, how do you feel about regulating the same companies that have paid you?
Now, when you talk about big insurance, I'm assuming you mean companies like Aflac, where 25% of your donations have come from. Now, let me make something perfectly clear. When I was a registered lobbyist, I worked for the state of Georgia at the Department of Insurance, representing taxpayers, representing firefighters, representing sheriffs on issues related to the department. I maintained a registration as a lobbyist for 3 years after that. I actually did not have big insurance clients. I had an educational client, and as chairman of the Higher Education Committee in the Senate, maybe you would remember that.
15-second rebuttal.
Yes, Ms. Sheffield, your lobbying your page at your law firm says that you are a lobbyist and that you have lobbied all of the state legislatures, and that is what you hold yourself out to be as a lobbyist. My campaign contributions came from friends of mine. Not a single dime has come from Aflac. That's against the law in Georgia, if you knew that.
Okay, thank you for your questions. That concludes round 2 of this questioning. For those who might be joining us right now, we're glad to have you. This is in progress, the debate among candidates for insurance commissioner in the Republican primary. And for our 3rd round, we return to our panel of journalists. They will ask questions of a candidate of his or her choice, and candidates will be allowed 1 minute to respond. And as moderator, I will determine if any opposing candidate will be given 30 seconds for a rebuttal. We're going to begin this round with Blake Odd.
Yes, Mr. Harp, I believe you did actually have a couple of contributions from insurance companies on your campaign disclosure.
Sir, I don't believe there's any campaign contribution has come from any insurance company. That is against the law, and if any campaign contribution has come from any insurance agency or company, they have been returned. We absolutely have not received any. We will not and will not accept any if they are offered, and no, we have not.
Does anyone have a rebuttal? Mr. Purcell.
I think we're beginning to see the problem here. Ronald Reagan said that we needed new leaders unfettered by old ties and old relationships. And I think when we talk about lobbyists and money and contributions from various, whether they be executives of insurance companies or they be from PACs, which are acceptable, I think that's a problem, and we need to be concerned about it. It's why we need a zero-tolerance policy on ethics in that department.
Thank you. Walter Jones with a question.
Thank you. Probably one of the biggest issues that you've all talked about has been Obamacare and the federal health reform. And we just heard Senator Hudgens talk about that. But I'd like to hear Senator Harp what you would do as insurance commissioner about from a state perspective.
In regards to Obamacare?
Yes, sir.
In regards to Obamacare, I think Obamacare is a financial disaster for the state of Georgia. The mandates that are in that bill will absolutely break the state of Georgia. We come away with the realization that first thing is we're required to increase the coverage for Medicaid from 100% of poverty to 133% of poverty. The economic projections of that from the Office of Economic Budget of the state capitol tells me that beginning in 2014, that will increase and require a $300 million a year input into the state's budget to pay for that. That's 10 furlough days for all the teachers in the state of Georgia. We do not have that money. And simply put, that and the high-risk pool that has been previously mentioned and is required and Commissioner Oxendine opt out of, both of those things really will break the state financially. We don't have the money.
All right. I want to thank everyone for sticking to the time clock. We do appreciate it. Does anyone have a 30-second rebuttal? Mr. Purcell?
Sure. Well, this is going to be the issue that consumes the insurance commissioner for the next couple of years. It happens to be the area that I have worked in for many years as a national free market health care expert. We need to vigorously fight Obamacare, working with the governor and the attorney general, but while we're fighting it, we need to fix the problems. We don't need to destroy 90% of what's working to fix a 10% problem. But in fixing it, we need more competition, more transparency. We need to go after tort reform issues. We need more fraud control issues, which is a $500 billion problem, and many other things that we can do to fix it.
Okay, it is Gene Ross's turn to ask a question. You want to?
Is there only one response?
There's only one rebuttal.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Gene Ross.
All right, well, let me ask you, what would be your rebuttal to that question?
I just want to commend the governor for joining 21 other states in filing a lawsuit against this Obamacare, as we want to call it. I think it's unconstitutional. I think it'll be found unconstitutional. While our Attorney General refused to join the other states in the lawsuit, I want to commend the governor for enacting that and for the attorneys that are doing it pro bono and not costing the state a lot of money.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mamalakis, rebutting.
You know, one of the things that's being challenged is the constitutionality. The entire law doesn't go away. It's only the mandate to pay for it, to force people to buy it. And I think that the real response ought to be is, what are we doing to be prepared with an alternative? And all we're doing at the present time is nothing, hoping that the courts, in fact, will rule in our favor. I think that's irresponsible. I think it takes leadership to do something different.
Okay, we're going to go to Blake with another question.
I have a question for Mr. Northington. I want to go back to something you said earlier, the question you asked about high-risk pools. Mm-hmm. Do you support Commissioner Oxendine's decision to opt out of the high-risk pool that states are supposed to create under the federal health care legislation?
I do, Blake, and the reason I support that is because I don't believe that with the money that was set aside that the federal government wanted to give to us, it was going to be enough. And so what I want to do as insurance commissioner is look at the other 45 states, because some of them have already put a high-risk pool in place that has worked well, others have not. And so as insurance commissioner, I want to look at all the different states, see what has worked well, and see what has not worked well, so we can learn from both. Because what we have is a situation where we've got 250,000 people here in the state of Georgia that do not have insurance because of a medical condition. And all that does is drive up the cost of insurance for those of us who do have insurance. So we cannot sit by any longer and do the same thing and expect different results. And so we have got to make decisions. Sometimes those decisions are going to have to be tough decisions. But we have to learn from the experts, learn from past experiences, and do the best job we can to make sure that we don't make those same mistakes.
Collum, you have a rebuttal.
Yes, I do. Thank you. What no one has mentioned is that there are two economies in this country: the legitimate economy and the underground economy. Drug dealers, illegal immigration, people being paid under the table. We need to tap into that underground economy. As a Deputy U.S. Marshal, I was in charge of the federal asset forfeiture program, to where we were able to tap into money that was seized during drug raids. That's an area that we can tap into to help fund any high-risk pool if we have to.
All right, Walter Jones, another question for a candidate of your choice.
Thank you. Mr. Hudgens, I'd like to get your views on the issue of selling insurance across state lines. As I understand it, insurance rates are based on the risk in the area where the person lives, not where the insurance company happens to be based. So why would there be any benefit to selling insurance across state lines?
Walter, thank you for that question. There would be a benefit if the law that I helped co-sponsor, Senate Bill 317, had been enacted. Now, what it said, there were 3 parameters that it had to satisfy. Number one, they had to have a registered agent in Georgia that you could hold accountable. They had to prove their solvency, and they had to agree to appeal any case or hear any appeal in the state of Georgia. Now, what this law said, that we would set reciprocity with another state, and any policy that was established and licensed for sale in their state could then be sold in the state of Georgia. For example, Alabama only has 21 mandates. Georgia has 45 mandates. Chances are and this would be called a mandate light policy, it would be cheaper for the people in the state of Georgia. But I want to protect those consumers and make sure that they don't have to go to Iowa or South Dakota to try to hold this company responsible when they don't fulfill their contractual obligation.
Maria Sheffield has a 30-second rebuttal.
You know, I would like us to phrase this differently. Instead of talking about interstate sales, which means interstate commerce, which means it's going to be regulated at the federal level, we do need to talk about this more in terms of reciprocity. But as we're doing that, we have to be careful. There was a bill that was pending this year in the legislature which would allow these foreign companies to offer products that our Georgia domestic companies would not be able to provide. Now, the problem with that is we don't want to put our domestic industry out of business. That's going to cost a lot of jobs here in Georgia.
Thank you. We're going to keep doing this until we call time. And so, Jean Ross, your next question.
And I have a question for Mr. Collum. You state on your website that you're not accepting any contributions to run your campaign. Why did you feel that was important? What message are you sending to voters?
I'm very glad you asked that question because that's an issue that's dear to my heart. We've already discussed it briefly already about the impropriety of accepting campaign contributions from anyone that is regulated or being regulated by the Insurance Commission. Integrity is something you live day to day. It's not something you just talk about. The only way that I can show by example is to live it. I will not take campaign contributions from anyone affiliated with the insurance industry. And also, I won't take campaign contributions from the hardworking people in this state. These are tough economic times, and they need that money for their families. Thank you.
Mr. Hudgens, you have a rebuttal.
Yes.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And I respect Mr. Collum for this position, but what bothers me is when you've got a candidate that says he's not going to take any meals or anything from anybody, yet in the year long that we've been doing this, we've had lots of meals offered by the various organizations, and this particular candidate always accepts that meal, and I think that's hypocrisy.
Okay, thank you for your responses. We're back to Blake Odd with a question.
All right. I think I'll address this one to Representative Knox, being the only member of the House. You might appreciate this, but now that pickup drivers have to buckle their seatbelts, are you going to be taking a look at insurance rates for pickup truck drivers if you're elected?
Well, I think that insurance rates, you may know that I authored and passed the substitute to Senate Bill 276, which eliminated prior approval on automobile insurance rates above the mandatory minimum that the state requires. And the reason for that is, one of the reasons that rates are so high in this state is we only have 3 or 4, maybe 5 insurance companies that write the bulk of all the automobile liability insurance in the state. It's the same problem in health care. If you have a very small market, you're not going to get very much competition among companies for that business. And my idea is a free market, free enterprise, capitalist solution to that is to create the environment that allows and encourages competition amongst the companies. You'll get lower rates doing that, and we have.
Would anyone like 30 seconds, Mr. Northington?
We definitely need more competition here, but what we have when it comes to rating for insurance is how far people have to drive here in Atlanta. And so we really and truly have a transportation issue. And so if we could develop a greater transportation system here in Georgia where people weren't having to drive 20 and 30 and 40 miles one way to get to work, when you actually look at how your insurance is rated, it's based upon the number of miles per week you drive.
Thank you. All right, back to Walter Jones with another question for a candidate of his choice.
Yes, Ms. Sheffield, How would you approach the issue of rural health? I mean, that's an area that the Insurance Commissioner's Office has gotten involved with in the last few years. But is that something it should continue to be involved with, or would you expand it further?
Absolutely. I am a small-town Middle Georgia girl from Ivy, the heart of agricultural country. I know exactly what it's like to have to drive a long way to see a specialist. I think the Rural Georgia Healthcare Initiative was a great idea. It's not funded by taxpayer dollars. It is funded by private sector dollars, and I certainly think that we need to continue that. I also think it can be a benefit as I travel around the state and speak to sheriffs. I think it can be a benefit there as well, too, as far as the cost of transporting prisoners. So we could actually see a benefit to the state for that. And so certainly that is something, as insurance commissioner, that I will want to continue and want to work with the private sector on.
Does anyone want to talk about rural health care?
Yes,
Mr. Purcell.
there's so many ways that we can go after that particular problem. I mean, think about it. We have 700 independent pharmacies. In many counties in Georgia, there's not even a doctor, but there is an independent pharmacist. We need to unleash the power that they have through medication therapy management. Telemedicine is another idea, another way that we can cover that. Community health centers, also one of the few government programs that actually has a definable return on investment. In fact, they saved about $16 billion last year. I think we ought to build more of them, and we ought to incentivize doctors to work in them by giving them tax incentives and allow them to bill that time, take it off their taxes.
Okay, we are back to our panel. Jean Ross, a question for a candidate of your choice.
All right, Mr. Northington. What is your opinion on whether the office of the insurance commissioner should be elected or appointed?
I definitely believe it ought to be elected. You know, the people of Georgia have a right, I believe, in order to elect the people that they choose. And I think the opportunity to have someone appointed just because the governor is elected doesn't necessarily mean that's the people's will. And so I believe each and every time that we should always allow the people of Georgia to decide whether it's going to be a Republican, a Democrat, independent, whoever. And we shouldn't take that right away from them in order to do that.
Mr. Knox.
I think that one of the considerations is the people of Georgia have already spoken on this issue. The insurance commissioner is a constitutional officer. They've indicated this is what they want through their vote for the constitutional change. Now, the real issue is, are we going to concentrate power all in the hands of the governor, or are we going to let it be in the hands of the constitutional officers that the people ask for, and we're going to have a disparate power base in state government? I think the latter is the preferable method. We could have gotten in big trouble if the governor had, if the insurance commissioner had caved in New York on the AIG problem.
All right, no rebuttal. Let's go back to Blake Odd.
Mr. Cain,
yes.
You've been quiet over there.
Yeah.
You and several of the other candidates are insurance agents. Can you tell us how, being an insurance agent, I'm assuming having a lot of friends in the insurance business, you know, how you can sort of objectively go about your job regulating the insurance industry?
I think us, the insurance agents that's running for insurance commissioner, are uniquely experienced in dealing with consumers. Consumers have problems. I'm an advocate for my consumers because I sell the insurance policy, but when things don't go right, I have to be their advocate. In other words, you know, I try to take care of their problems. I think that an insurance agent is got a vast knowledge of experience. I've been an insurance agent for 31 years, from going door to door selling life and health insurance to owning my own agency the last 27 years. I've dealt with companies. Somebody said it's like putting the fox in the hen house when you put an insurance agent. I don't think so. I think insurance agents, if they're good people, will do the right thing for the citizens of Georgia, just like they do in their agencies, taking care of their consumers.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. Northington and then Ms. Sheffield.
You know, I actually had somebody ask me that question out in Oglethorpe County, I believe it was. And the fact of the matter is, an insurance agent like myself and these other two gentlemen have to represent both the consumer as well as the insurance company, and we have to do the right thing all the time. And I think as insurance commissioner, we've also got to do the right thing all the time, and that is to protect the consumer from the insurance companies when the insurance companies do something wrong. But at the same time, we need to look out for the insurance industry in order to have a free market system to where we have competition coming into the state of Georgia. And I think it's a great opportunity to have as insurance commissioner an insurance agent.
Ms. Sheffield, did you have a response?
I do. I think that it's very beneficial to actually have worked at the Department of Insurance. As someone who worked there for 6 years, I had an opportunity not only to work on insurance issues, most of us focus on that, but remember, as insurance commissioner in the state of Georgia, you're also comptroller general, industrial loan commissioner, and safety fire commissioner. So when you go into that office, you have to be able to multitask, and you have to be able to deal with a lot of different issues from day one.
All right, we are back to 30 seconds.
Yes, Ms. Sheffield left the insurance commissioner and went out the revolving door right into the regulatory industry as a lawyer, taking and regulating the industry that she had worked for as an insurance. Now she wants to spin the revolving door one more time and go back into the insurance commissioner's office so she has the ability to take the very people that she purportedly has been working for and then attempting to regulate.
I will give you 30 seconds, Ms. Sheffield, to respond to Senator Harp.
I'm not sure I quite understood all of that, but I believe as someone who, again, who has worked at the Department of Insurance and has this vast experience, and then someone who now in the private sector has worked with consumers, that having that background, being able to see things from both sides will make me a fair, efficient, and effective regulator.
All right, thank you. We're back to Walter Jones with a question for a candidate of his choice.
Thank you. As has just been mentioned, there's more to it than just insurance. Mr. Purcell, another bill that came up in the legislature that was having to do with whether or not new residential construction should be required to have automatic fire sprinklers.
Sure.
What's your position on that?
I am not so sure that that is the case. I mean, particularly that we should allow that at this point. I mean, think about the economy that we're in right now. We're in difficult times as it is, and when I look at legislation, I want to see what the unintended consequences, Walter, of that legislation are. I think right now the building industry is taking an absolute beating throughout Atlanta, and I don't think, whether it's a good idea, and it may be well-intentioned, of course, but I'm not sure that the timing is right for that particular bill. So I would say let's hold off on that, give it some more study and thought before we go down that road.
All right, we have about 30 seconds to hear from Mr. Cain.
I can't believe that they were fixing to require new home construction to have sprinkler systems. I'm sure the sprinkler industry had something to do with that. But it would be a terrible thing. I deal with homeowners all the time, people building new homes, and it's hard enough for people to even get the loan to build their home, much less put a sprinkler system in their house. I would be against that if I was insurance commissioner.
All right, 15 seconds for Mr. Harp.
What we had to do was the national building codes mandated the sprinklers. And what the legislature did was exempt out the requirement that sprinklers be put in domestic homes. And the legislation was not a requirement that they go in. The underlying building codes is what put it in. What we had to do was take it out.
Okay, thank you. Last question from Jean Harp.
All right, Mr.
Jean Ross, excuse me.
That's all right, Mr. Mamalakis. Part of the duties of the insurance commissioner is to work for the state insurance department, act as a consumer protection advocate, and an insurance regulator. A lot of hats. With your history in the insurance industry, how can you assure voters that you would look out for their best interests?
Well, you know, my whole contention, the reason that I'm in this race is that I've been in the insurance business for 37 years. We've never had anyone from the industry in the position. I know what I'm made of, and I know that I have excellent standing within the industry, but I'm not beholden to it. I think if we're going to make any progress for Georgia to become one of the top-rate insurance departments in the country, we're going to need to have an insurance person that understands the nature of what we're regulating from an insurance background and not from an attorney or career politician background.
And unfortunately, we have no more time for rebuttals or questions. Now each of the Republican candidates for the primary of insurance commissioner have 60 seconds each for a closing statement. And John Mamalakis, you go first.
Thank you so much to the Atlanta Press Club for having us here tonight. It's been a pleasure. As I said, for 37 years I've been practicing insurance. I've attained the highest level of professional designation in the property and casualty industry. the CPCU designation. And I have many leadership qualifications as well. I'm president of the local CPCU society. I serve on the foundation at Armstrong Atlantic in Savannah, graduate of Leadership Savannah. I do believe that it's time for a person in the industry that has integrity and has experience and professional experience to offer themselves to the public in hopes that the public will realize that for us to get better at this, we need to have someone who has insurance experience to lead us into the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now it's time for Stephen-Dale Northington to give his closing statement.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Atlanta Press Club as well for the opportunity to come here tonight. You know, when I started in the insurance industry 17 years ago, it was with a mission to be able to provide for my family and to serve people. And that's exactly what I've done through the years. And I've worked with a number of different insurance companies, but for the past 8 or 7.5 years, I've been an independent agent and represented a number of companies. And you know, as Mr. Mamalakis just said, we need someone with insurance experience. When you read the Obama bill, it states over 24 times that these changes that are coming from the federal health care legislation is going to go through the insurance commissioner's office. And when you consider that the Georgia Constitution requires that the agriculture commissioner has to be a farmer and the attorney general must be an attorney, I believe it is time that the insurance commissioner of Georgia must have insurance experience.
Thank you, Mr. Northington. Tom Knox, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you for to the Press Club and to Georgia Public Television for allowing us to be heard today on these vital issues. I have practical experience in the insurance industry. I served in the industry about 20 years ago. I'm also an attorney and I'm a legislator. I have served on in the General Assembly as chairman of the House Insurance Committee for the last 6 years. And I know that we're in the midst of a big battle. And the insurance commissioner of this state better be ready to put up a fight, or we're going to lose our insurance future, we're going to lose our health care system, and we're going to lose our personal freedom. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to be having the attorneys from the insurance department working with the governor's attorney to turn back Obamacare. Our voices do count. We're going to be heard. You're going to be heard. I'm going to be heard in Georgia and in Washington, D.C., and we're going to say, no, this is not going to happen. No, we're not going to surrender our future. This industry is much too important and too valuable to Georgia to let the government take it over.
Thank you very much. Maria Sheffield, you have 60 seconds for a closing statement.
Thank you all very much for this opportunity. I am the only candidate that has worked at the Department of Insurance and worked in the private sector protecting consumers. I am ready to lead. My life has been filled with challenges. My mother was killed by a drunk driver. My father died from brain cancer, and I cared for my grandmother. I understand real life, and I understand insurance. Now, taxpayers need access to the best insurance options, and they deserve to be treated fairly. Georgia's honest insurance agents need to be supported. Sheriffs and firefighters need to know that they have an insurance commissioner that will work with them on arson and fraud investigations. Victims of natural disasters deserve relief. Now, I will certainly oppose all Obamacare policies, and I will reduce the size of state government. I will cut programs in the department that are unconstitutional and streamline all others. Government is not a jobs program. We don't need unnecessary rules and regulations. I believe in the Reagan agenda of faith, family, and freedom. And I'm asking you for your vote tonight. I'm asking you for your prayers. You can follow the campaign on Twitter and Facebook and on the website at mariasheffield.com.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sheffield. Seth Harp, 60 seconds for a closing statement.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm delighted to be here with the Atlanta Press Club, and thank you, Georgia Public Broadcasting, for bringing us this tonight. My parents instilled in me the value of service over self. I have been honored to serve my country in combat in Vietnam as an officer in the United States Marine Corps. I've been honored to serve my community as a Sunday school teacher, chairman of the board of the Hospital Authority, a member of the school board in Muskogee County, and as a state senator for the past 10 years. I'm not running for this office as a stepping stone to advance my political career. I'm running to serve the people of Georgia. Our state needs an experienced conservative Republican leader who knows how to cut taxes, how to keep and live within a budget, and how to work to repeal, replace, or restrict Obamacare. I've served as an ex officio member of the Insurance Committee, and as I am currently a member of the National Conference of State Legislators Committee that has oversight of these things. As your next Insurance Commissioner, I promise to work with integrity, honor, and accountability. Thank you, and God bless our state, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Harp. Dennis Cain?
Yes, back in 2005, I was talking with a good friend of mine, and he said, Dennis, why don't you run for politics? And I said, it's a dirty business, Frank. I really don't want any part of it. And he said, Dennis, God needs Christian men and women in politics. And I decided to run for this office. I'm a Christian. I'll tell you a few things I'm for or against. I'm against credit-based insurance scores, as you know. I believe the answers for health care problems in Georgia lies with the private sector, not with some type of government plan. I'm not a career politician. I'm not an attorney or a lawyer. I've got 31 years of insurance experience. I'll do the right thing. You ask my customers back in Hazelhurst, call anybody there, they'll tell you Dennis Cain will do the right thing. I have not or never will knowingly take money from those that I'd regulate. I believe the Office of Commissioner of Insurance needs to integrity and honesty. It needs to serve the citizens of Georgia, not special interest groups. I will be your advocate if you elect me for your insurance commissioner. Vote Dennis Cain, Republican, for Commissioner of Insurance on July the 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. Now, Ralph Hudgens, you have 60 seconds for a closing statement.
Thank you to the Atlanta Press Club and to the panelists and to my wife, Suzanne, mother of my 4 children and the best grandmother for 12 grandchildren. The campaign motto I have is experience is the difference. I have administrative experience. This is a large agency. And in the first Bush administration, I administered a large agency. I've got legislative experience. I've got business experience. I own 4 small businesses. I understand the importance of insurance. And if you'll elect me as your insurance commissioner, I'll make sure that the consumers in the state of Georgia are protected. That's the job one for the insurance commissioner, is to make sure that the consumers are protected. I would love to do that. I'd love to earn your vote on July the 20th. My website's ralphhudgens.com, and I would like to have your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. Gerry Purcell, 60 seconds.
Well, Ricky, and to the Atlanta Press Club, thank you so much. Julianne and I are delighted to be here tonight. For the last 3 decades, I have been leading. I'm not just ready to lead. I have been leading. And experience is important, but results are what count. As a military officer under Ronald Reagan, as a businessman who's turned around 5 failing multi-million-dollar businesses, someone who had cancer at 29 but turned that into a career, which is now health care, and I've been literally saving clients and state governments and taxpayers around the country millions of dollars over the years. We're in a street fight over the next few years, and we need somebody who knows health care top to bottom. We've got to fight Obamacare, but while we're fighting it, we have to fix it. And we fix it with marketplace ideas. And that's how we win. That's how we win people into the Republican Party. And in fact, we have been winning for the last 14 months. We've won 32 GOP straw polls, 18 with more than 50% of the vote. JerryPurcell.com. I need your help. Thanks for your time tonight.
All right, and our final closing statement, Rick Collum.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Atlanta Press Club and our panel, but I also want to thank the other candidates for willing to serve. Over the last 20 years, I've fought for justice as a Deputy U.S. Marshal, as a Special Assistant Attorney General for the state of Georgia, and as a judge. And I'll continue to fight for justice for the citizens of Georgia elected to the Insurance Commissioner's office. Integrity is something that you live, and that's the reason I haven't taken any campaign contributions from anyone. I'm in this to serve, and all I want is your vote. Thank you.
All right. That concludes our debate. We would like to remind voters, that is you, that primary elections are Tuesday, July 20th. And our thanks to the candidates in alphabetical order: Dennis Cain, Rick Collum, Seth Harp, Ralph Hudgens, Tom Knox, John Mamalakis, Stephen Dale Northington, Gerry Purcell, and Maria Sheffield. And we would also like to thank our panelists. We have Blake Odd from the Athens Banner-Herald, Walter Jones from Morris News, and Gene Ross from WAOK V103. And we would also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. And for more information about the Atlanta Press Club, you can go to their website, which is atlantapressclub.org. The debates are going to be airing on Georgia Public Broadcasting. They'll be archived on the Press Club's website. I'm Ricky Bevington. Thank you for joining us for this primary election debate. We invite you to tune in at 7 p.m. Sunday, June 27th, this Sunday, when the series of debates continues the races for state school superintendent and secretary of state. And there is more information about Georgia Public Broadcasting at our website, which is gpb.org. Have a wonderful weekend.
The Atlanta Press Club Debate Series is made possible by a donation from the late Tom Watson Brown.